Lerato. I'm struggling. I struggled with the surname. I won't lie, and I hope that when she when she comes on, she'll pronounce it for us. But I've always called her Lerato, and I didn't think this time would come where I have to introduce her on a professional platform. She's a CASA. She did her articles at PwC, and she did her undergrad at Rhodes University and did her postgrad at UJ. She also, during her articles, her focus areas was insurance and investment management. This is where she built relationships with Shanduka Finance team, where she went on to be the head of finance and involved in the process of selling Shanduka assets to Pembani. She had a good working relationship with the then Chief Financial Officer and the Chief Investment Officer of Shanduka, that when he funded his own investment house, he asked her to join his team. She then moved to Alpha Investment Group, where she worked her way up, being the finance executive and working in the CEO's office. They built the company from scratch till she decided to take her own personal journey. She is now at Hollard Insurance Company, where she is the head of finance, looking after the biggest books of the business in the group. Lerato is a mother of lovely 2 young men and is married to an avid Comrades marathon runner. In her spare time, she offers her time as a mentor in the Cyril Madiba Empowerment Foundation, where she mentors young aspiring CAs. She's an avid believer of Black excellence and believes in sisters building bridges for each other in the corporate journey. And I can attest to this because Lerato was actually my mentor in the Cyril Madiba Empowerment Foundation. And if anything, I've learned from the process of our mentoring journey is that we do need to speak about each other in those rooms and mention people's names that we know when we get into those rooms. And that's some of the key things that she taught me during our mentorship program. So Lerato, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this session. I know it was a short notice, but I'm so privileged to be on the other side and being able to introduce you as our guest speaker today. How are you?
Thank you, Swisiso. Thanks for that introduction. I don't know if you guys can see me because I'm trying to put on my camera.
Not yet. We can't see you yet. We also gave you presenter, right? So if you do want to share, you can share from your side.
Okay. I don't know what happened when I joined. My camera was on, and now suddenly my camera can't go on. Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Evening, everyone. Okay. Thanks for the introduction, this. So I think, yeah, thanks for having me today. And also, it's a privilege for me to be here today because I believe every time anyone gets to listen to anything I have to say, I suppose it's also a privilege for me to be in their presence. So thank you all for making the time. I've just been asked to basically share a bit about myself. And if you'd allow me, Spoo, can I just go straight into that?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. So I put together just a timeline of my life journey. And I did this timeline when I was doing my Gibbs Global Executive Development Program. And we had to actually just jot down the peaks and troughs in our lives. And I suppose this is an exercise that will consistently change as different things happen and evolve in my life. And as certain key events stand out, and then others that used to be significant, I suppose, fall away. But just to reflect on my journey, building up to becoming a CA, what I wanted to share with you guys, I suppose, are the challenges along the way, some of the, I suppose, the wins along the way, and also that important factor of we are all human. So life happens whilst we're busy planning. Life actually happens outside of our own plans, and different things then tend to happen. So just to take you on a journey, I matriculated in 2003 at Eden Glen High School, that's in Johannesburg. And then in 2004, my parents got divorced. It's a significant event in my life because that changed, I suppose, a broad spectrum in terms of how I view life. Also made me very self-protected, self-aware, and also caused quite a big wall around myself in terms of who are the people I let in my space. But then I went on to study at Rhodes University in the same year, and then graduated in 2007, my undergrad. I think my undergrad was, I would say, one of the best times of my life. I mean, I was a Golden Key member. I was an A student. Everything was flowing. Life was great. Everything that was meant to happen happened the way it was supposed to. Then at the time at Rhodes University, they used to only accept 40 students into their CTA class, so which is like your honors or DipAc class. And at the time, then I qualified to make it into that 40, the top 40, from the initial 300 odd that joined to actually do the CA route. Then in the year that I was doing my CTA, I actually failed my first attempt at CTA. I suppose during that journey, there was a lot of things happening. You have friends, you're trying to balance your friendships, you have relationships, you're trying to balance relationships. And also, I suppose the school and the workload at the point in time was a lot more than what I thought it was going to be. And at the same time, I think I came from that high of thinking, okay, I've got this, I've just made it into the top 40. I can do this. Yeah, I've got this, so I can relax, And then, no, reality soon slapped me in the face to make me realize that you actually need to always be prepared and put in the hard work in order for you to meet the goals you want. So then after I failed in that year at Rhodes University, I then moved over to UJ to then start doing my articles. Actually, I moved over to PwC and started doing my articles without CTA. At the time, they used to actually accept us. I suppose we're the rat that messed things up for everyone that came after us. But what happened is I started my articles my first year, and then I also then started doing my CTA with UJ part-time. I would say that was not a good idea for me because the workload from the articles was actually quite a lot and ended up consuming more of my time than my studies. So then obviously that led to another failure. But then soon after, I then paused my articles with PwC and then went on to actually study full-time. So in that year, my dad actually took me to go get a loan because, my parents were done paying for me. They were done taking care of me. They had done everything they needed to do. So then they said I needed to go take out a loan. He backed me up as my surety, and then I got a study loan and went back to school full-time and studied at UJ full-time. Then in that year, in 2010, I passed my CTA. And then I went on to also then write my first board exam. I think now it's the ITC, I think it is. Mm-hmm. Somebody can correct me there if I've got that wrong. But then, I passed my ITC on my first attempt as well. And then later in that same year, went and actually passed my board 2 as well in the same year because I had already started articles, so I already qualified in terms of my hours, and I was able to write board 1 and board 2 in the same year, passed both at the same time. So that was like, I suppose, a great achievement along the way. And then, as I mentioned earlier, relationships happen. I got married I went off on secondment, or I qualified with PwC in 2011, and then I went off to secondment in San Francisco, where I worked at the PwC San Francisco office for 4 months. I stayed there and worked there for a while. Got further exposure into the investment world as well there. Funny enough, I must tell you, when I went over there, I was already a qualified, or you could say I was already qualified, but I was just waiting for SAICA to sign off my hours. But when I went over there, I was already a an assistant manager in South Africa. But then when I got to America, they gave me like first year article clerk work, okay? I think it was just that mentality of, okay, she comes from Africa, or they come from Africa, because we all found that we got first year article work when we landed, but soon proved ourselves to be to be a bit better than the American qualification. So we ended up getting a bit more work. I ended up getting more work. And then by the time I came back to SA, my manager back in America actually wrote me an amazing appraisal about how my work ethic was, in terms of how I also was willing to teach and train a lot of the article clerks that were on the job as well. I mean, I actually ended up teaching them debits and credits, because if you actually know how they qualify for the exams, they actually do write the exams via a multiple choice. So you can actually imagine trying to do your exams via multiple choice. I think that would be very difficult and a disastrous situation. But yeah, post that, I came back home after my qualification. And then, after secondment, came back home, got married in 2014, gave birth to my first son. And then life happened again. Got divorced so quickly, didn't even last that long. But then, yeah, I've left that relationship, walked away from that, went and invested in other things in terms of my time and my effort. I then focused on doing my CIMA. So SAICA offers you an option of doing the strategic case study with CIMA so that you can qualify as a chartered, what's it, CGMA? Chartered, not general management accountant, but I forgot what it is, but it stands for CGMA. Did that exam, passed my strategic case study. So basically then just have to submit my portfolio of evidence through to CIMA in order to actually use the designation CGMA next to my CASA. But yeah, I did that at a time where I basically needed to refocus and rehone in on who I am and what I wanted to focus on in terms of myself and moving myself to a better place. So I just needed to do some work on myself. Then in 2019, I remarried, and this is where my wonderful surname that Sibusiso cannot pronounce comes in. It is actually Lula. In fact, I only took the surname now in 2022. I've always carried Lerato Hlohlongoane. So everywhere, if you ever look for me, you'll find Lerato Hlohlongoane. And then this Lula surname just happened to pop up this year. But that was mainly because of COVID, and it was very difficult to change things at the time when I got married. But yeah, and then in 2021, I then started volunteering as a mentor at the Cyril Madiba Foundation, as I've mentioned, as Sibusiso mentioned in the intro, where I also met Sbu. And then I went on in terms of, well, I suppose 2022, where I am now, is currently the head of finance at Hollard. But in terms of my achievements at Hollard, I've only been at Hollard for 3 years. But in terms of my achievements since I've been there, is I worked on a steering committee where we focused on the COVID business interruption claims. And that's basically for, I would say, businesses that shut down during COVID that actually had insurance claims to actually try and recuperate and recover from the COVID event. So I was on that steering committee, and then we went on to win the Group CEO award. So in the 3 years that I've been there, I suppose it is one of the most prestigious awards to actually get within the business overall. So that is a proud moment I had this year. And then, yeah, and then this year I also completed my Gibbs Global Executive Development Program. This is like a leadership course where you go to a different country. We went to Spain, and you get to do a business case on the country you're on based on everything that they taught you before you left SA. Completed that course, finalized, and actually passed it. So that's another win in my pocket. And then in terms of my next level and moving up, my next level is I'm planning to do my MBA next year, focusing on people and focusing on how to retain people. I suppose right now, the world of the corporate is facing a huge, I suppose, a new war in terms of trying to retain key talent. And I want to do an MBA in understanding what employees want or what your top key talent wants in order to remain happy and to remain satisfied in the space they are in. So yeah, this is basically just a recap of my life, high level. I suppose in terms of undergrad and focusing on undergrad, a few things I can tell you about my undergrad. I was a sub-warden at Ellen Gray House. I think it's probably like the first girls' race at the bottom of the hill in Grahamstown. Or I still call it Grahamstown. Sorry, please you can correct my pronunciation there. But in terms, I was a sub-warden there. That's what I did in order to try and hustle for extra cash because my parents just, I suppose from day one taught me always to try and be independent. I remember there was a night where I went out to work as a bartender thinking I'd make extra money. I literally tended for one night and nothing else after that because I was just like, it's just not for me. Also, whilst I was doing my undergrad, I also played netball. I did a bit of debating as well. And I tried to stay in some of the social committees there as well, because I found that balanced the hard work and the studies. You needed downtime at some point in time, and that's very important. So I suppose in a nutshell, that is just the reflections of my journey to becoming the CA I am, and still continuing to my next level in terms of my journey for me. Thanks, Mr. Song.
Okay, thank you so much, Lerato. It's Makanda. I'm not sure. Gqeberha is PE. Gqeberha is PE. Wow, and your research, I love that. I love that. And before we go to the next segment, I just want to see if people were listening. Can you guys type in the chats in which year did Lerato graduate? From I'm not gonna graduate undergrad. She did say this. I hope someone is gonna answer. And with your surname Lerato, I actually thought it was too easy for it to be Lula. So I tried. I'm like, let me Google. Maybe I'm gonna get something. But no, Google started to correct me. I see a hand. Lusanele, you can go.
Hello everyone. I'm sorry I do not have a chat box, but I did hear that she graduated her undergrad by year 2007. Yeah.
Thank you, Lusanele, and thanks for being so brave and unmuting your mic. Okay, so thank you guys. I see the responses there. So Lerato, I just wanna ask. You said your undergrad was very nice. Right, it was not like such a hurdle. So what are some of the things that you can say to people they can do to live in the moment? So let's say, for example, you find that you do want to be engaged, but then there's also academics that are sort of demanding. Maybe you can touch on what is the importance of doing things that matter, like playing netball, emphasize more on that. What were some of the most important things? And at that stage, did you know that they were actually assisting you, or was it just because you like doing those things?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think netball for me was more of a stress reliever. It was just how I relieved my tension. You know, like if you've been trying to crack a question and you're just getting it wrong. I found that just to go out, play netball, sweat it out, and then come back with a fresh mind used to help in terms of my studies. But also doing debating. At the time I started debating, I thought I was a good debater and I thought, oh, let me go do this. I soon realized that I actually sucked at it, but I kept at it because the lesson learned from that is that communicating and being able to articulate yourself well is very important, whether it's in your business world or your working world or at home, anywhere and everywhere. It's very important to be able to articulate yourself to be understood. So I suppose the benefits from the debating aspect, I'd say, is what helped me out in terms of my communication, being able to prepare for my presentations at work, learning certain things, certain habits that I now know about myself that I shouldn't do when I'm speaking publicly. So that, I suppose, is one of those that will always be a great takeaway and a great lesson. But yeah, like I mentioned, the sports and the socializing with friends was also important just to get the mind to relax. You know, you do need the downtime in order for you to be healthy. Healthy overall. You must be a healthy, fit human being. The mind must be healthy and well. The body must be healthy and well. So I suppose that is what helped me out.
Okay, thank you for that. I see we have a hand. Andy, so you can go.
Thanks, Sibu. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Lerato, and thank you for taking us through your journey. It's so relatable to some of us. I just wanted to ask, like it's more or less a follow-up question on Sibu's question. When I was doing my CTA, I often felt like taking a breather, like you're saying, doing things I like. I had some sort of guilt, like I should be studying. I should be studying. Why am I taking time off? That was on my first attempt, and then I think I had a change of mind. But I just wanted to ask, for the sake of the our mentees, to say, how did you overcome the guilt of taking time off to do stuff you liked, and also like just relaxing your mind? Because I feel like subconsciously we know that we need to rest, but somehow we feel like we're wasting time. Yeah.
I think for me, the thing with that is, I suppose because I tried the CTA twice, I think I sort of mastered the things you should not do. and not resting was one of those things that I learned in terms of it's not good to not rest. Well, or rather, it's really not good to not rest. You do need rest. Your body needs it. Your mind needs it. But also, what I found was that if you change your way of studying and find a way that is more effective, because sometimes we spend so much time studying, but it's because it's an ineffective way of studying that it takes so long to study. So when I did it again, when I passed it, I actually found a new way of studying, and it didn't require, like, I won't say as hectic hours, because, you know, with our course, you do need the hectic hours, but the output of my ability to grasp concepts and understand things better and to present my answers in ways that afforded me more marks was actually a lot more fruitful. So I spent time more on exam technique the last time, well, the time I passed, more than I spent time on theory, because you spend so much time on theory thinking you're going to crack it, but actually that's your study technique that's not effective. And that's why you then end up feeling like guilty when you're away from it. But if you actually change your study method, that it's so effective that once you've done a paper and you've changed your way of how you actually approach that paper, by the time you walk away, you're feeling so good because you did well in your paper, you got it, you understood it, you absorbed what you needed to absorb. By the time you're away from it, you're not feeling bad. You're not feeling like, I should be looking at the theory. No, the theory, guys, like no one can drill the theory into you more than you have had it for the past 3 years. So it's a matter of study technique needs to be wise. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Lerato. I think Andisa gave a thumbs up. I see 2 hands. I'll take the 2 hands and then I have a question after those 2 hands as well. Tita, you can go.
Thanks, Sibu, and thanks, Lerato, for sharing that as well. I think your journey is quite inspirational. I've got 3 questions real quick. The first one is on your 2 attempts of CTA. I see on your life map that the second attempt was at a different range of happiness or satisfaction than the first one when you failed the first one. So I just want to understand, like, what changed? Did you have a different attitude to the second failure? Is that the reason why it's at less than the level that a level of satisfaction than you had on the first attempt? I think the second one is on the CGMA and MBA. So CGMA is Chartered Global Management Accountant. What's the importance of supplementing this designation? I think from an undergrad and postgrad level, just for us to understand while we're still doing our undergrad, while we're doing our postgrad, what are we going to be looking into once we qualify? Because once we qualify, what next? But what's the importance of supplementing our CASA designation, whether it be something else that's not necessarily CGMA and MBA? And I think the third question is, you mentioned that you're mentoring on the Cyril Madiba Empowerment Foundation. Did mentorship play any role in your journey since you matriculated through your studies and all the way until CA? And how are you mentoring? Like why are you mentoring? Like why are you mentoring, and what's this burning passion with mentorship that you have? Thanks, madam.
Right. Thanks, Dita. You've given me such great questions. So the second attempt, where I said that my disappointment or my level of disappointment is a lot less, or slightly less than the initial one, was because when I first failed my CTA, like I said to you, my undergrad was great. So, I mean, I came from high school. I was an A student all my life. I just knew how to crack things and just, I was an achiever. I was an overachiever. I was a go-getter. Everything was great. Then that first attempt, when it happened, it was the first time I experienced failure. Okay. So I didn't know how to deal with it at that time. So I think it broke me to some extent. And it took a lot to literally dust myself off and pick myself up again. By the time it happened again, I had learned the tools to cope with failure. And so, and that's the beauty of why I sometimes think, you know what, maybe there was a reason why I needed to do this 3 times, because you come from this, I can do anything, and then you crash and you're like, shucks, wow, I'm nothing, I can't do this, I must just give up. I mean, I went through that process where I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to be a CA. But then when I got through the second time, I was like, okay, what is the lesson here? What do I need to take from here that I need to carry on to the next point? Because the goal does not change. And that's what I was more focused on at the time, that my goal is to be a CA. That's not changing. I can do this. What do I need to do to learn to move on? So that is why there's that variance in terms of the disappointment. And then in terms of supplementing the CASA designation, I would say it's not necessary. Okay, it depends on who you are as an individual, how ambitious you are, what brings you joy, what keeps you going. I'm the type of person that gets very bored very quickly, and that's why you'll see there's a lot of educational things happening on my journey, because I feel like I need to consistently learn and challenge myself and what's the next best thing. And after I actually got my CA and qualified as a chartered accountant, in fact, once I passed that CTA, the year I passed that CTA, I told myself there would never, ever, ever be anything in my life I'll ever fail ever again. And there hasn't, because it's just like that one event changed everything in terms of my perspective. So I don't think you need to supplement. You just have to make that a personal choice. So as you said, it doesn't have to be an MBA, it doesn't have to be the CIMA route. it can be something maybe that you are passionate about if you want to supplement. So I've got a friend who's a CA, but she works in HR, and she's gone and done all these HR courses as well, you know, because that's her passion, that's her love, that's what she's into. And then I've got a friend who's also CA, who's in mining, and also went on to do other mining courses. So it could be what industry you land up in, what you are passionate about, that also guides you in terms of what can you add. It doesn't add to the brand, I must tell you. It just makes you a better brand, because you yourself as an individual are a brand, you know. So you as the brand also just keeps adding. You keep adding to the value that you offer to your employers, to, if you're an entrepreneur, to your customers, to the people you service. So I would say, yeah, take it out based on your own personal journey, and that is basically would be the best way to look at whether or not to supplement. And then in terms of mentorship, my mentorship journey, basically, I had a mentor in PwC. So PwC had us set up, well, had a set mentorship program where we were mentored by our associate directors, so just one level lower than a partner. And that's where I suppose I fell in love with mentorship, because I got a mentor at the time who was absolutely amazing until, unfortunately, she passed away. And that lady put in me that fire to you know, she grew me and helped me in so many things in life. And I mean, even on some of those personal journeys there, she was there to help me and advise me and walk me through it. But that also put in me the fire to say, you know what, shucks, imagine if I could give this gift to somebody else, because to me, this was actually a privilege. It was a gift bestowed upon me. And therefore, I needed to just do the same, give it on to somebody else. But also, like I said, I'm very passionate about Black excellence, and I'm very passionate about sisters building bridges. So it's that thing for me where I want to give to the next person. And as I'm going up in my next level and my next level, I believe in building bridges for those who are coming behind me as well, so that the next level for the next person is not as tough. And it really doesn't have to be if we are all just holding hands and just come together and work as one. So yeah. Thank you, Dida. Those were great questions.
Thanks, madam.
All right. Thank you so much, Dida, for those questions. Very insightful. I'd also like to go to our next person, Leanda. You can ask.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Lerato. I feel as if I'm so fortunate to be able to ask you questions here. You have already achieved a lot in life. I'm so inspired. I used to tell myself, Bana, after CA, I'm not interested in school anymore. So but now I changed my mind. My first question, I feel as if it's related to Dita's question. You fail CTA. At the same time, you were a student, top student. How did you manage to bounce back? Like, it's not easy. If you are a top student and you fail, it's not easy to bounce back. So how did you manage to bounce back? The second question is that you passed ITC, and at the same time, it's a second board exam. I think it's an APC. Within a year, at the same time you were working. Like, how did you manage to do that? Because deadlines as a trainee, at the same time you have to start. How did you manage to do that? I'm also interested in your articles life, as a trainee, how did you manage to handle this deadline and your mental health and so forth? Because articles are so demanding and there is a lot. So I'm also interested to know. And what did work for you and didn't work during your articles? I'm also interested to your life after articles, like challenges and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, Leanda. So for me, the bouncing back, right? As I mentioned, it was very tough. So I actually went through a process where Sure. I suppose my poor mother suffered the most with me at the time because she really didn't know what to do or how to get me out of bed and get me revived again, you know. The one thing that helped though was I had a good support system around me in terms of even my friends. So some of my friends that had passed also assisted in some of the studying that I had to then do, and I decided that I'm actually going to pick myself up and do it again. My mother was my sounding board. She was my strongest person. The one thing that I think I found most is I started reading a lot of self-help books. and in the end, I realized that really no writer is going to write me out of my misery. I need to do that myself. The one thing about self-help books is they tell you, they can tell you and advise you how to help yourself, but the action comes from the individual, and that's where the power lies. And once I realized that, you can read as many books, but the reading doesn't change the situation. You need to get up and change the situation. So that's what made me decide that I was going to focus on what I wanted. And the goal was the CAE-SA qualification. So I changed my stance of, okay, let me be miserable in this, but focus on what I want and what I need to do to get there. So that's how I bounced back. In terms of how I managed to balance the two board exams in 1 year, the first one we wrote early Jan, and then the second one we wrote in November. So as I mentioned, that the way I passed my CTA was through a change of my study technique. So that study technique worked for me so well that I was able to balance work and studies. But because I also was so fresh coming from studies, my mind was already prepared and engaged in terms of, okay, I know after work, this is my routine. This is what I do to relax, to calm down, just to block my mind off of that cash book recon that I need to go and tick some more boxes on. I needed to switch off, I needed to find a way to switch off. So I started boxing as well, and also started running a little bit. And that helped me switch off and have time to come back to, okay, now let me go into my study routine in the evenings. That is something that I did personally as well that helped me there. And in terms of meeting deadlines and juggling all of that, I would say, we always work more than we actually. I'm going to be a bit biased in the statement, and please, I hope not to offend anyone, but the color of our skin always makes us have to work a lot more harder. So you're always having to work for the color of your skin, for the fact that you need to meet the deadline, and for the fact that you're trying to impress the person that you are actually doing the work for. So that for me, I suppose the work ethic already existed in how I used to study, because there's a reason why I suppose the journey to being a CA is so hard. Even in the article, it's just a thing that they put, it gets drilled within you so that you are able to just do this, but managing deadlines and all, I would say it was tough, but it all came down to prioritization, sometimes sacrifices in terms of time alone or time with friends in order to make sure. And also, I suppose it also speaks to how ambitious are you, and in terms of yourself as a brand, how do you want people to see you and portray you? And if you're not in the room, what do you want people to be saying about you? And that drives you as an individual to give what you can give versus what you think, let me just tick this box because I have to tick it and that's good enough. That was one of that. It's just I suppose, a mindset as well. In terms of after articles and challenges that I faced, I suppose post articles, life is tough. And then when you go into, so articles, life is tough, but post articles, life becomes more tough because now you're joining the work world and you have to get acquainted to corporate way of life and different cultures in terms of where you work. So for me, the one thing that helped was that I I used to audit Shanduka when I was in articles, so I sort of knew the culture and understood the culture of that business. So by the time I had to move from audit into working at Shanduka, it was very easy to adapt to the culture. But what I also found at the time was, because I had that mentor before she passed on, it helped to have somebody give me a different perspective, even though she was in audit, but she also made it possible for me to speak to some of her friends who were outside of audit as well, who gave me a perspective in terms of what corporate is like, what corporate culture can be like, and what are the challenges you can face. I would say speak to as many people as you can. Speak to people in the industry you're interested in as well. That can help. Speak to people in the company you want to work for as well. That's always very important. And use your networks. You know, you never know who you know that may know somebody, but use your networks as well to try and get more information in terms of understanding, yeah, I suppose, the corporate culture there. Don't know if there's any other questions. Not sure if I covered you there, Leanda.
Leanda, you covered. Okay, I hope he is. I just have a question, right? So we talked about CTA. I just want to go back. I want to go back to where the foundation is. What's the importance of getting a proper foundation? I mean, first year and second year, it seems like, you know, you're just passing by, but I do feel that there is something that you grab there. And I just want to ask, what are some of the foundation that you think that it's very important to grasp in your first and your second year, which have probably, as when you look back, you're like, oh, you know, that helped. I didn't think it was very valuable at that time, but it actually helped me now. Do you have maybe some examples of that, or just maybe an emphasis on the importance of having a proper foundation?
Yeah, I can't think of at this moment of anything at the top of my mind that I can look back on and say, okay, that helped. I think one thing we need to be aware of is that life is an accumulation of different experiences, right? So I suppose first year, second year, third year, all of that adds up. So what you learn in first year, make sure you do to the best of your ability. What you learn in second year as well, it's adding on to what your prior year knowledge was. So make sure you take that all in. And I suppose also the importance of our profession is that you are always learning something new. You know, the standards change. Even now, as the CA I am, I still need to know exactly what has changed within the standards. I still need to be able to articulate to you, you know, this is in scope, this is outside of scope, this is what is, this is how we measure it, initial measurement, subsequent measurement. You still need to know those things to that level of detail. But it becomes it becomes easier if your foundation is good. So the things you are learning now, don't think you are learning to forget. You must know you are learning to consistently be adding and adding and adding and adding, because this profession is not about what you learn, you forget. It's about what you learn. You must think about why you are learning it, what you're taking it to, and I suppose where you're going with it next, you know. And nothing in this journey is ever a tick box exercise. Don't ever think that. Don't make that mistake. Everything you're learning is going to add to something else that's coming along the way. Yeah.
Lerato. And I also just want to say that, like, I think it's yeah, a lot of things we don't see them. We really don't see the importance up until you get to a certain level and you're like, oh, okay. Like, for example, I'll make an example. There was a module where we would learn on how to read, how to skim and scan. Like, that module, when I was doing it, I didn't realize its importance. But I see now, when you get a document that is 300 pages and you have to read that thing during your working hours. It's very important. So those little things, I think we must just always embrace them. Is there anyone else with a question, or should I ask a question to the floor because I haven't been asking? Okay, let me ask. So do you guys remember where did Lerato say she did her undergrad? Okay, Luyanda.
Roads.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last one. In which year did she write a board exam? The first one. Okay, then this will be the last one for the prize. Okay.
2011.
Why are people getting it wrong? Unless I have it wrong, but I think I have it right. All right, I think we have someone who said 2010 over there. Thank you, Anele. I'll take note of you guys. I think it was Anele Lusanele. But do you guys have any questions for Lerato from the audience? Any burning things that you want to ask her? You can just ask her anything. She's a very nice person.
Yes,
Leander.
we can definitely see she's a very nice person. Just a quick one, Lerato, on your moving to Rhodes. You were born and bred in the Joburg region, if I got that well. You went to Rhodes in Makanda, and you went back to UJ. What was happening there?
So when I applied to UCT and Rhodes, right? Rhodes came and accepted me first before UCT. And then when it was time to now make the decision between the two, I just decided on a small town because I was like, okay, I come from this big city. Let me just go to a small town and just see how this life is. Then I landed at Rhodes, and I must tell you, it still is probably one of the best places, or one of my favorite places in the world. I really do actually love. Sorry guys, Wakanda, right? What is it?
Makanda.
Guys, I can't, like, it's Grahamstown to me. Sorry. Okay. But yeah, it was the move for me changed my perspective as well in terms of the people I met along the way, and the friends I made. You know, my friends from Joburg versus my friends from the Eastern Cape are very different, and I'm still friends with them. We still meet up every now and again, and even even my first marriage, hey, it was to a Xhosa guy. So so I have my son is Xhosa basically, so it runs in my blood now. You know, it's what I love. But outside of that, moving back to Joburg was a big transition. Moving back to the big city, bigger campus. I mean, UJ versus Rhodes, it's a completely different world. Then the culture as well, very different, and I had to adapt to that, to this fast-paced culture back home. But if you ask me, given any day, I would probably retire in a small town. Yeah.
Are you answered, Dita?
Yes, thank you so much, madam, and thanks, Lerato.
All right, Andiswa, I think we're close to wrapping up. Do you have any last words for us to finish? I'm saying Andiswa because she's my co-host, guys, so I must always check with her. Hi, Andiswa, you are unmuted, but I can't hear anything. You know, your network is a bit bad. Okay. I think there's a problem with her connectivity. I see she's trying to say something, but I can't hear. Okay. Okay, sorry, Anissa. I'll just ask Lerato, do you have just me?
Oh, she's breaking up.
Yeah. It's fine. Lerato, any last words? And then after that, I can close the session. I'll just check with Andisa on the side.
I guess since you guys focus for tonight, or your topic is focused on your next level, I suppose my closing words would be like, as you reach your next level, remember to build a bridge for the person coming up behind you. It's very important that we do this as a community, as a people, and try to make, let's try to be kind to each other and make the journey easier for those that come after us.